Coming up on the Terry Talks show.
I have a test called personal negativity, which nobody likes to take. Usually people ask me, can you do like matchmaking and the likes? Yes. I mean, I can, but I don't like it.
Greetings, viewers. My name is Terrence. Welcome to the Terry Talk show. And on set with me is Stephanie Pike, who is going to deliberate and give us a bit more about her background as we welcome Steph. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here.
Thank you for allowing yourself and the time to come and give us a bit about yourself and your background so that we can help enthuse and give optimism to those out there in these trying times. So please, before we go further, please tell us about your background, where you're from, and what led you to this place that you are in currently in your life.
Okay, so how I became a brain practitioner is I had gone through a really rough patch in life, and so during that time I wanted to understand how and why people think differently from me. Why do I think differently from them? And so I went on to study the mind, study the brain, and study how people think. So usually people think it's medical, but no, it has more to do with psychological. And so that's then how I became a brain practitioner. In doing that, I also started to focus on how our thought processes affect our mental health as well.
Oh, interesting. I would never have gone for brain practitioner in my personal life. However, very interesting. I've never really heard about it. But in terms of where we are in life currently, with the scenarios that we have faced, the pandemics, different type of lifestyles that people are facing and challenges, how then can a brain be influenced by what you do?
Okay, so basically what I do is that when I say I'm a brain practitioner, I do a brain assessment on individuals starting from the age of 4. And so right from the age of 4, I am able to analyze and see whether a person is left brain or right brain. And as you get older, the brain goes into 4 dimensions where you have a top left brain thinker, a bottom left brain thinker, a top right brain thinker, and a bottom right brain thinker. I, for one, am a bottom right brain thinker. You find certain people who are all 4 quadrants equal. And so in terms of, finding yourself, taking a brain test would help you to know whether you are top left, top right, or you could be bottom right and top left. And so that then identifies your talents and also your hidden talents.
Okay.
And areas that you don't know of, areas of your strength, areas of your weaknesses. And so that's where I come in and help you to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and also your purpose.
Okay.
Yes.
So by merely looking at a person, can you do a facial brain analogy of a person?
Not per se. There's a few things I can pick up from speaking to people, but I'd have to do like a proper analysis on them and sit with the person and actually speak to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You haven't done a brain test on me, but would you specifically pick out the talents that I carry? Why I mention talents, it's something that I'm very interested about, on how people identify their gift and talent. So how then would you identify ones? What does it take to do that type of test? And is it costly?
Yes, so I offer a number of tests, individual tests, which are my favorite tests because I am all about personal growth and personal development. I also offer relationship tests where 2 people come in as a couple and they take their test and and I identify their strengths and weaknesses as a couple and areas that they differ in and areas that they could be similar in. I also take tests for families. You can find that a parent can give birth to a child who is on the total opposite side of the brain as them, and then a child who is the same as them. And so in terms of family dynamics, that also helps in identifying your child's strengths and weaknesses. I also take a parenting test. I have a test called personal negativity, which nobody likes to take because
personal negativity. What's that all about?
The personal negativity test is where it's areas that you are negative in, areas that you are not good at, and areas that you need to improve in terms of just your life in general. And so not many people take those tests because nobody wants to know what they're not good at.
I'm sure I wouldn't. It's kind of scary to delve into my negative traits.
Yeah, yeah. And so I also do sports profiles and also company profiles to see how to help companies grow in terms of their thinking preferences as a company and help them to improve in certain areas.
When we talk about company profile, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a company brand, or are we talking about the synthesis of the people within the company?
Yes,
Let's
yes,
say
yes.
Microsoft has 50,000 people.
Yes, I would take 50,000 brain tests for Microsoft, and then the majority of preferences, let's say 90% of people in Microsoft are top left thinkers. That means that there's 3 quadrants that are lacking, and so I would teach Microsoft to improve on those other quadrants, because the top right brain thinkers are usually your creatives. The top left thinkers are usually people in finance. The bottom left thinkers vary. And then the bottom right thinkers are people who usually deal with counseling, psychology, and just who are very empathetic. I'm not saying the other quadrants are not, but yeah.
Yes, lest some people get touched and
yes,
affected.
yes. So each quadrant has its own area of strength.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about a politician before we go further?
Majority of politicians are on the left dominant side of the brain.
Left, okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes. Very set in their ways, right or wrong, black and white. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's quite interesting, the dynamics. You've mentioned something that caught my attention. You're talking about the relationship aspect. How would you then clinically precision me to my perfect partner? I know a lot of people have those type of questions, because right now everyone is talking. When you look on their WhatsApp status, on their social media feed, it's mostly relationship based, or they're laughing and joking about relationships. How can you bring 2 people together and correct their way of living or lifestyle and bring them as one party?
Okay, so when it comes to relationships, the fact that 2 people are together, then it means that something brought them to that place. And so, you know, usually people ask me, can you do like matchmaking and the likes?
Yes.
I mean, I can, but I don't like it.
Okay.
And so what I do is that a couple will come to me and take a test, and if somebody is, let's say, for example, bottom left brain and your partner is top right brain, I would then tell the bottom left brain thinker that they need to learn to accommodate the top right thinker, because they are risk takers, they are very creative, and then the bottom left are people who are they like to plan ahead. And so the 2 quadrants, usually you can find that they will have maybe they'll clash sometimes, and so I then teach them to say, okay, look, you guys are together already. I'm not going to say because you think differently, this is not going to work out. But if people are willing to compromise and say, okay, I understand that my partner thinks like this and my partner thinks like that, I then teach you how not to become one quadrant, not to have a one quadrant relationship, but to have a whole brain relationship. So for all my tests, the main reason of taking the test, be it relationship, sports, company, individual, is for you to become a whole brain individual, where I said earlier on, I'm a bottom right thinker, but I am learning to become a whole brain thinker, where I've got percentages in the left, I've got percentages in the top right as well. And that's how you perfect yourself in terms of personal development and just personal growth as well, to become a whole brain individual, whole brain company. It just depends. And so I would then teach the couple to become a whole brain couple, rather than sticking to people being set in their ways and saying, I'm not going to move from the left, I'm going to, you know, not to just stay in a box, but to become a whole brain person.
Usually in relationships, there's one who's really hard-headed. Can you then resolve the dispute of a hard-headed man or a hard-headed woman, so that at least you can soften the resolve between the 2?
So from a counselor's perspective, I would say that, you know, the first step for anyone wanting to change, or like you asked me, if this person is set in their ways or they're a little bit difficult, if a person wants to change, they have to acknowledge that they have a problem, and they have to be willing to want to change their ways. If they are not, then I'll then say that, you know, the person doesn't either value the relationship, because then it's a two-way thing. You cannot be set in your ways and expect a person to just, you know, understand you, but you not understanding them. So step number one is to acknowledge that you are like that and to be willing to change.
Interesting. It brings me to a follow-up question, especially in this pandemic. We faced a season where we were under lockdown.
Yeah.
Most couples faced each other daily.
True.
In a season where they'd never seen themselves face to face, day to day, 24 hours a day for almost probably a month, others 2 months, others 3 months.
Yeah.
How does that affect a person's mental state?
Okay.
And what then helps them to understand who they were within that type of setting, being the lockdown type of setting?
Okay. So when we speak about mental state, there are two types of mental health issues that people suffer from every day.
Okay.
One is called psychosis.
Psychosis.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the second one is called neurosis. Neurosis is usually where you know that that you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, that you're going through, you know, something. And then psychosis is where you find yourself having sort of like hallucinations, delusions, and where you have sort of eliminated the normal day-to-day routines. Like you wake up, you shower, you eat. When a person has psychosis, those things are almost null and void. They have different sleeping patterns, either too much sleeping or not sleeping at all. But with neurosis, which is something that I personally suffered from during lockdown.
Okay. The brain practitioner suffered this?
Yes, I did, because, I mean, my business wasn't doing so well. I wasn't, you know, things changed, a lot changed. And so I was stuck in this one place for hours on end. And so, you know, I knew that I had something was wrong with me mentally. But with neurosis, you are aware. There's certain habits that change, there's certain things that change. But now when neurosis develops into psychosis, that's when you can say that now you've got a proper mental health illness. And so, you know, with people right now during COVID, a lot of people have been retrenched.
Yes.
A lot of marriages have failed or broken apart because people were going through these things without actually knowing that, okay, now I've got a psychosis, now I've got neurosis. And so, you know, also from a brain practitioner's perspective, people also didn't understand that, you know, they got to understand, in fact, that, okay, my partner actually thinks like this because
Yes,
you spent a lot more time with them, you know. And so where you get to a point where you now can see and identify that there's something wrong with you.
Okay.
It's not always easy to get to a point like that. And so it's people around you who say, okay, Stephanie, I see that your daily routine has changed, or you have shifted from the way you have been behaving. And so, you know, but I was aware. I was aware that it took time, but I got to a point where I acknowledged that, okay, I've got, there's something wrong with me. And so, you know, with your mental health, it's also very important to have that introspection and check in on yourself, because I counsel a lot of celebrities, a lot of people, and so sometimes they don't actually know that this is what they're feeling, or this is what they're going through. And so, you know, it's an interesting journey, you know, the journey of introspection, where you actually have to look into yourself and say, am I okay?
Okay, because when I hear the issue of about the mental side of a person, I usually don't anticipate it to be linked to a celebrity or someone within the millionaire status, or someone who's well off, or someone who's doing a lot better than others. So it hits all sides, from the poor, middle class, to the top.
It definitely hits all sides, because at the end of the day, we are all human, but how it hits is different. So someone who is poor, sometimes they feel as if they've got a mental illness and yet they've got a need. And the need is food.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So sometimes you get a person that the need is food, and once you give them what they need, they're okay.
Okay.
But then a mental health illness is where now you are in a position where you are constantly dwelling on an event that has happened. So for example, a divorce or a death can cause someone to have a mental health illness. So it varies from person to person. It just depends on, you know, so your millionaires have this status that they have to maintain.
Yes.
And so with that comes a lot of mental pressure, in as much as there's also this pressure of appearance as well. And so when they're dwelling on what people will think of them, the celebrities constantly have to portray a certain life on social media. And so they go through a lot. They really, really go through a lot. No, they do.
Like a lot of money?
No, they've got money, but money cannot strengthen your mental state.
Okay.
You can take yourself on a trip, you know, to Dubai or wherever, but if you are not okay mentally, you'll still go to Dubai and be miserable there. And so it just depends on what is causing either the psychosis, the neurosis, or just, you know, the stress. You know, with stress comes mental health illnesses as well. When it's there for too long, it then develops into a mental health illness, depression, anxiety. And so, you know, all these things that I'm saying, I'm being as vulnerable as possible. I've suffered from them, and I know exactly how they can impact, you know. So I can drive around looking very happy, and yet I'm suffering from anxiety, I'm suffering from depression, and sometimes people don't know, and sometimes they do.
I appreciate you opening up and bringing yourself to a vulnerable state, because probably the viewers, when they're watching, they would be looking at you, they see the glow, they see the hair, and they think, no, she can't have gone through this. So I really want to appreciate you for that. So what then brings healing, finally? Number one, in a corporation, in an individual, and in a couple, in the terms of a relationship. What then brings healing within these three?
Okay, so what then brings healing is that it's just the same way when you break a leg. The fact that you are aware that your leg is broken,
right,
and that you cannot walk with it. The first thing is, are you going to dwell on the broken leg and cry and complain that you're not able to walk?
Okay.
Or are you going to do something and say, I've got a broken leg, but this same broken leg can still walk one day?
But the issue with the mental issue is a person doesn't know it's broken. How do we know it's broken?
How you know it's broken when it comes to your mental state is when you find yourself shifting from the normal certain patterns,
as you've mentioned,
I've mentioned, certain patterns. And also, you know, people around you will notice as well. But there's certain people that don't like to be told.
Yes.
And also there's certain habits. I mean, your physical state will be affected. If you're not mentally okay, your physical state will be affected. Either you will not sleep or you'll sleep for too long. It's either you have loss of appetite or so something changes. There are signs that, you know, you have some sort of a mental illness, because certain things change.
So what about a person who's peckish like myself? From time to time I get peckish. I might want to nibble something at 11 just before midnight. I want to nibble on something at 1 in the morning. Is that a difference in pattern?
No, that's just a habit.
Oh,
that's just a habit. Usually also when you are going through any mental illness, there's certain things that change. You start to isolate yourself from people. Your communication changes. You know, so there's certain patterns that you can identify, you are able to identify and see that, okay, no, I have changed in this regard. 2 months ago, I was speaking to so and so. I was communicating with my friends. I was going to places, and now I'm not doing that. So routines change, habits change, and you will be able to identify that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can differentiate between a go-getter and a lone ranger by virtue of you picking what's in their brain. What if I'm a lone ranger naturally? Is there no scenario that depicts that situation? Or is there an excess towards something and a mid-range towards something?
Okay, with regards to the brain assessments.
With regards to the brain assessment.
Okay, so with regards to the brain assessments, when you take a brain test, yes, I mentioned the 4 dimensions, the top left, the bottom right, but in taking a brain assessment, there's also the 8 dimensions of the brain.
It gets deeper.
It gets deeper, yes.
8 dimensions.
And so you get scores in terms of certain percentages where, for example, my percentage in the R2, like I said, I was an R2 empathizer, right? But there's two sort of attributes that come with the R2. It's either you're an R2 empathizer or you're an R2 socializer. My socializer was 19%. So
What's
that's
a socializer?
A socializer is a person who's very sociable, who can just naturally speak. I know it doesn't seem like that right now, but I'm not very sociable. And so that is an area that I've improved over the years in trying to become a whole brain. And so in the different quadrants of the brain, the R2, the R1, like the creatives, there is an R1 Imagineer. That's your very creative person, and then your R1 strategist.
Give me an example
Right.
of a very creative person, an Imagineer.
A person who can literally be sitting in a room right now, but imagining them filming a movie somewhere else. People who come up with ideas that others would say are strange.
Strange.
Strange,
Okay.
yes. The R1 Imagineer's mind goes as far as, thinking about things that not everybody else would, and they will nurture them. And an R2 strategist is a person that sees almost like into the future, into 2024, who will strategize and plan their lives like an eagle. So the quadrants also come with animals.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so an R1 Imagineer is a dolphin.
Oh.
An R2 strategist is an eagle. You know how an eagle can sit up in the mountain and wait for them to attack, like chicks that are sitting that are
That are
by
miles away, yeah?
miles away. That is the R1 strategist. And then you have the left side, which there is the L1 realist and the L1 analyst. So there's those two as well. And then the L2, there's the L2 preserver and the L2 organizer. The people that are said to be OCD are usually the ones that come from the L2. Although that is just a stereotype, because not everybody who's neat and who likes to have things in a certain way are OCD. But OCD is also a mental illness. If you, in
Goodness
case you didn't
me.
know, yeah, that's what they say. And so the R2.
Interesting.
So there's the 8 dimensions: the realist, the analyst, the Imagineer, the strategist, the socializer, who is the flamingo bird, and then the elephant is the empathizer, and then the cheetah is the organizer, and then I think it's the antelope that is the preserver. So it goes deep into that. And so you asked a question to say, how would you know that I am someone who isolates myself or someone who's quiet? Your brain test results will show that.
Thank you so much for so much information in such a short space of time. As we close, what would your closing remarks be for one to cope within the season that we're in, the difficult circumstances, whether we move forward further and we then get out of COVID and the pandemic, if they're in a tough situation, whether it be at work, in their relationships, at school, how then would you give them advice on coping mechanisms of how to get out of the rut?
Okay, so a lot of people have
I like that.
this idea that, when they're going through stuff, it's their fault. COVID-19 is not your fault. And COVID-19, everything comes to an end. At some point, this pandemic is going to be something of the past. And what you do with your time now, what you do with your talents now,
Indeed.
will then have an impact on your future, so that when you are hit with a new pandemic, you have got your life sorted out. You are mentally stable. And so how you can cope is focusing on the positive things of life. The fact that you're listening to this, the fact that you are breathing, the fact that you are here, means that you've actually got a purpose. And so there's something that you can do with your, I always say to people, look at your hands, right? Or look at yourself. The reason why you are alive and breathing is because you've got a purpose. And so do something with your hands. Do something with that mind. Something that can impact the next generation. Something that you can leave a legacy for your children. And so to not focus on the problems of the pandemic, but to focus on the future. And to say, okay, how am I going to cope? I'm going to cope by looking at what I can do in the future to change the world.
Wow. Stay positive are the final remarks that we have gotten from Steph. Thank you so much for wrapping it up for us in such a candid way and a positive way. Thank you to our viewers at home. We hope you have been enriched